Welcome, my dear senior high school students. Today, I will discuss to you our first topic in this course. But before that, I will share to you the main book that I am using as my reference in this course. So, I believe meron din kayo nito. So, this is the book that I am using as my reference dito sa subject na ito. The title of the book is Oral Communication by Pena and Anudin. This was published this 2020. Okay, so we will now start. Let me share screen to you. Okay, so this course is entitled Oral Communication. So find an area in your house where you can sit comfortably and focus. Prepare your notebooks and ballpen to get started. So you will be needing notebook and ballpen for you to take down your notes. So set up your study space and prepare that. Okay. The first question that you will be asking is what is communication? So our first topic is all about the nature and elements of communication. So in this lesson class, you will understand what communication is and how the process of communication, of oral communication goes. So you will explore the elements which will help you visualize and gain insight into how communication happens. But before that, let me read to you this quote from Dr. Joseph Somerville. So we take communication for granted because we do it so frequently, but it's actually a complex process. So what does it tell us? Communication is a part of us. So wherever we go, communication exists. But sometimes we tend to forget the importance of communication. Bakit nga ba importante siya? Bakit kailangang pag-aralan si communication? So we just take it for granted and we choose to make ourselves busy with our gadgets or anything. Sometimes when someone is talking, we don't want to listen, okay? Class, let us put in your minds that listening is very important, okay? I know this is just self-explanatory, but I want you to inculcate this in your minds, especially later on that you are going to take your board exam, okay? If you did not listen well to the instructions given by your proctor and you answered the questions directly, do you think you will pass the examination? Definitely not. Why? Because you chose not to listen to the instructions given by your proctor. Iba yung ginawa mo. Hindi ka nakinig, okay? Iba yung ginawa ng mga nakinig at ng mga hindi nakinig sa proctor. So that is why it is very necessary to listen. Kahit sa parents, teachers, classmates, o kahit sino, matuto kang makinig, okay? Kasi yung mga napapansin natin nowadays, merong mga bata na ayaw nang makinig, di ba? They chose to, what? Decide on their own, okay? Hindi na sila, or hindi na nila kinakausap yung parents nila, or kahit yung mga kasama nila sa bahay nila. So most of the time, we tend also to miss important information because we are not listening. Kaya class, importante po talaga na makinig tayo. Listening is very important. Why? We do not know what to do, okay? And in your case, some students always seek help from their classmates, lalo na kapag nagbibigay na ng instruction si teacher. So for example, in a classroom setting, di ba? Dati, nung sa mga previous schools ninyo. So, while si teacher nagdi-discuss dito, nagbibigay ng instruction kung ano yung gagawin, most of you are not listening. Why? Kasi yung iba, nagsi-cellphone, nagchichismis sa katabi, okay? So, you tend not to listen to the information coming from your teacher. And anong gagawin after? Magtatanong sa classmates. Besh, ano nga yung ano? Ano yung sabi ni teacher? Ano daw yung instruction? Yan, kasi hindi po kayo nakikinig. Okay? So these are some of the situations in our life na alam kong na-encounter na ninyo. Okay? So I hope na kahit online tayo ngayon, matuto pa rin tayong makinig kung ano yung mga dinidiscuss ng teacher sa inyo. Okay? So let's proceed. Now, when we talk of communication class, it is the process of giving and receiving between a human source and a human receiver using words, symbols, or action. So communication is important or essential to human life. For without it, we cannot function properly. Okay, so imagine ninyo lahat tayo hindi nagsasalita. Ano kaya yung mangyayari sa atin? Okay, so we are social beings and this is the reason why we get along well with people every day. Okay, so human beings tayo, kaya gustong-gusto natin yung nakikipag-usap tayo sa iba't ibang tao or kahit kanino. So we could send messages using words. Okay, pwede yon. Symbols or even actions. So even yung mga hand signals, that is already a communication. Kahit hindi ka nagsasalita, kahit expression lang ng pagmumukha mo, may meaning na yan, okay? Even the eye contact between the teacher and the students, or for example, in a classroom setting wherein habang si teacher nagde-discuss and tinitignan niya yung mga estudyante niya. So, those facial expressions or those gestures na ginagawa is lahat po yun may ibig sabihin. So, kahit hindi tayo nagsasalita, kahit through body movements lang, lahat yun may ibig sabihin. So, it is our ability to communicate that makes us different from all other living things. Why? Because we are rational beings and we are unique. Unique tayo kasi we are the ones who can talk literally. Okay? Nakakapagsalita tayo, we cry and express our own ideas. So, sometimes nga meron yung iba na, halimbawa, broken-hearted sila, di ba? So, ini-express nila yung sarili nila. Minsan, naiiyak pa sila habang nagkukwento, okay? So, ito yung isa sa mga bagay kung bakit unique tayo compared sa mga hayop. Kasi, we have the ability to share what we feel. Kung ano yung nafe-feel mo, pwede mong sabihin, pwede kang magsulat ng poem kung ayaw mo namang mag-share sa iba't ibang tao. That is why nagiging unique tayo. So it is our instrument for human interaction. We were able to talk from one person to another because of communication. Apparently, communication is indispensable. Ibig sabihin, this is very necessary to us since it is very much part of our life. So we have to use it effectively. Okay? Next. Communication came from the Latin word communicare, meaning to share or to make common. It is the exchange of ideas from one person to another. So exchanging of ideas, class, can be done from one person to another. It could be from a certain group of people, like if there is a group presentation, di ba? Just like for example, in a classroom setting, for example, merong reporting na binigay sa teacher. So di ba? Kapag may reporting or group reporting, so mag-uusap kayo, mag-brainstorm kayo, ano yung gagawin ng classmates nyo, sino yung magiging leader, okay? Sino yung magsusulat, okay? Reporting, or it could be done in an orientation or assembly. So for example, merong orientation or students assembly wherein pag-uusapan yung mga importanteng bagay. And kapag may mga tanong, so ini-encourage din. So it can be done from one person to another, or it could also be in a certain group of people. Okay. Next, we have here the communication process. Number 1. In a given context, the sender converts his or her thoughts into signals such as words, okay, usually using the mouth. So when we talk of sender, class, pwede rin siyang tawaging sender or speaker. So he or she is the transmitter of verbal and nonverbal communication. So he or she is the one who encodes and sends the message going to the receiver. So kay sender magmumula kung ano yung gusto niyang iparating kay receiver. Next, the sender sends the signals or speaks through a channel such as air. So pwedeng kapag magbibigay si sender ng message niya, pwedeng sasabihin niya or through speaking. Next, as the signals are sent through the channel, there is some noise, okay? Anything that reduces the quality of the signals, such as when words cannot be heard clearly. Ayan. So, channel, this is done especially when talking. So, minsan habang nagsasalita tayo, merong noise. Ano ba itong noise, class? Okay? When we talk of noise, something that blocks the communication process to transpire. Ibig sabihin, ito yung nagbablock sa atin for the communication process to transpire. So, it could be because of the signal. Kaya minsan nagkakaroon, sinasabi natin na, uy, choppy ka habang tumatawag tayo. Kasi minsan nagkakaroon ng problema sa channel na ginagamit natin. So it could be because of the signal. So that is one example of noise. Okay? And for example, merong dumaan na sasakyan, maraming dumaan na sasakyan and meron ka pang kausap. So sometimes nagkakaroon ng noise sa ang part doon sa mga dumaan na sasakyan. Okay? So it could be a noise para i-block yung communication process na to transpire. Okay? So minsan, hindi natin masyadong naririnig yung gustong sabihin ni sender sa atin as receivers kasi nga, merong mga noise na nagba-block sa atin sa communication. Okay? So present din po, but not, maybe not all the time si noise, pero nandyan po talaga si noise. Hindi natin maiiwasan na merong barrier o merong magba-block sa atin while communicating. Next, the receiver hears the signals using the ears. Ayan. So, next, the receiver converts the signals into thoughts. Wait, the receiver hears the signals using the ears. Now, when we talk of receivers, class, or receiver is the one who hears and receives the signal or the message. So kapag magsisend ng message si sender, pupunta yan doon kay receiver. Ibig sabihin siya yung tatanggap ng message na binigay ni sender. Okay, number 5. The receiver converts the signals into thoughts. So wherein the receiver will now decode the message being sent by the sender. Kumbaga, yung trabaho ni receiver dito, class, is siya yung mag-i-interpret kung ano yung message na binigay ni sender sa kanya. So he or she will now analyze the given message. So yan yung trabaho ni receiver. Next, number 6. The receiver sends feedback by becoming the sender. Now, when we talk of feedback, it is the reply or response ni receiver going back to the sender. So, it is happened after the decoding of the message. So, once po na-interpret na ni receiver yung message, that's the time na magbibigay siya ng feedback or what we call reply. So the receiver will now give his or her reply or response back to the sender. So the cycle goes on and on. Why? Because our receiver who sends the feedback will now be our sender. Kasi nagkakaroon ng cycle, kumbaga nagkakaroon ng two-way process of communication. Bakit? Si receiver, pwede siyang maging sender once na nagbigay na siya ng feedback going back to the sender. And the sender will now be our receiver kasi siya na naman yung mag-receive ng message galing kay sender. He is also our receiver. So, nagkakaroon ng cycle. Paikot-ikot lang po yun. Okay? Now, we have also the elements of communication. So, communication has elements that work together to produce a system. So they are composed of the following. First, we have the sender or senders. So they convey messages by converting their thoughts into symbols or observable signals such as words. So this is called codification and is usually done through the use of language. So yung sabi ko kanina, sender can be also called as speaker. So they are the transmitter of the message and the source of communication. So tayo, we can be sender, pwede din tayong maging receiver. So he or she is responsible for dividing the symbols into chunks that are decipherable. So when we talk of decipherable task, it's understandable to receiver. So kailangan si sender, if he or she will send the message, kailangan siya din yung mag-a-adjust na para maintindihan or madaling maintindihan ni receiver yung message na ibibigay niya. Okay? Next, we have the receiver. So receivers hear the signals and convert the symbols into their thoughts. So this is called decoding, deciphering, or interpretation. So the individual or the group of individuals who responds to the sender is called the receiver. And the work of receiver class is to decode or interpret, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina, the message sent by the sender. So, si receiver yung mag-iintindi, kailangang maintindihan niya kung ano yung message na binigay ni sender sa kanya. So, in doing so, the receiver must hear or observe the signals correctly. Not only should the symbols be heard correctly, they should also have the same meaning for both senders and receivers. If not, a breakdown in communication will occur, especially when the receiver experiences difficulty in deciphering the symbols and putting them in the correct chunks. So then he or she will experience difficulty in understanding the message. So kailangan the same yung understanding ni sender and the receiver doon sa symbols na sinend ni sender para hindi magkakaroon ng communication breakdown. So kailangan similar po yung understanding nilang dalawa. Because in many communication activities, senders and receivers switch roles frequently. Okay? Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina na nagkakaroon ng two-way process of communication. That means the sender becomes a receiver and the receiver becomes the sender. So, both senders and receivers must be competent in communication. Hindi pwedeng si sender lang yung nakaintindi ng message na binigay niya. So, kailangan si receiver din, alam niya kung paano i-interpret yung message na binigay ni sender. Okay? Next will be the message. So, messages are the ideas or thoughts that are transmitted from the sender to receiver. So they are the result of the interpretation of symbols when meaning is derived from observable signals, okay? Now, the proper reception of a message depends on correct interpretation by the receiver of the symbol sent by a sender. So now when we talk of messages class, it could be written, it could be it could be written, pwedeng symbols, pwedeng pictures, pwede na sinasabi mo talaga. So, in turn, correct interpretation by the receiver of the symbols sent by a sender is greatly affected by the similarity between the culture and experience of the sender and receiver. Now, the culture and experience class together are called schema, okay? Some theoreticians call this the field of experience. Why? When there is much similarity between the schema of the sender and receiver, there is much bigger chance of correct interpretation. So, yan yung sinasabi ko kanina na kailangan merong similar interpretation si sender and si receiver para when it comes to giving of information, the same yung understanding nilang dalawa. Okay? So, I think we have an example in your book. So in order for the sender and receiver to understand each other, they must speak the same language. Why? Nagkakaroon din po tayo ng factors na nagbo-block sa communication to transpire. And one factor is the language. Now, try to imagine, class, if the two persons are speaking different dialects, so how could they understand one another? Paano nila maintindihan yung isa't isa kung silang mismong dalawa is hindi nagkakaintindihan kasi nga meron silang iba't ibang dialects. So that is one example of factor that yan yung isang factor kung bakit nagkakaroon ng breakdown sa communication. Not only so, but they must also communicate at the same level of proficiency in that language or else a breakdown in communication will occur. So kapag wala silang the same level of proficiency, dyan napapasok yung barrier na sinasabi natin na nagba-block sa communication or naghihinder sa communication to transpire. Okay? Another element is verbal and non-verbal symbols. Now, symbols are observable signals transmitted from sender to receiver. Symbols can come in any observable form, okay? So symbols do not have meaning in themselves, okay? So when we talk of symbols, class, marami yan. Pwedeng verbal symbols, yung mga sinasabi natin, or it could be also non-verbal symbols like your body movements, your facial expressions, your gestures, okay? Symbols do not have meaning in themselves. They only stir up meaning in the minds of receivers. Kumbaga tayo yung gumagawa ng meaning doon sa mga symbols na yon. So for example, class, try to close your eyes. Okay, try to close your eyes. So when the reader says the word dog, okay, ano yung image na meron kayo sa mind niyo, okay? An image in the mind of the receiver is formed when the receiver hears the word dog, okay? Ano yung pumapasok sa isip mo or ano yung nai-imagine mo kapag nakarinig ka ng dog, okay? However, it is up to the receiver what kind of image comes to mind, okay? Bakit? When I say close your eyes, kapag i-close niyo yung eyes niyo and I will say the word dog, ano yung nai-imagine niyo, okay? Whether the dog is furry or not, okay? What breed it is, anong breed ba yung nai-imagine niyo ngayon? What color and size it is, and etc. Okay? In fact, sometimes the meaning stirred up by the word in the mind of the receiver. It could be maybe different from the meaning intended by the sender. So in order for the right message to be transmitted, class, the receiver must be able to do things. Ano yung dalawang bagay na yun na kailangan tandaan ng receiver? First, observe and interpret the symbols sent by the sender correctly, okay? Hindi pwedeng magpataka lang, okay? So, kailangan alamin muna and intindihin mabuti kung ano yung message or symbol na binigay ni sender, okay? Next, symbols may be verbal or non-verbal. So, when symbols come in the form of utterances from the mouth of a speaker, they are considered verbal, okay? If they come from body movements other than that of the mouth, they are considered non-verbal. So I know that you are used to do this verbal communication. So ito yung the way we talk, okay, nakikipag-usap tayo to a single person, or it could be in our circle of friends, okay? So verbal symbols, it is the use of sounds and words to express yourself orally, okay? Now, when we talk of non-verbal communication, class, it refers to gestures or facial expressions, tone of voice, eye contact, body language, posture, and other ways people can communicate without using language. So sometimes, for example, in a classroom setting na naman, class, so sometimes si teacher habang nagdi-discuss, di ba? Of course, si teacher kailangan niyang magkaroon ng eye contact sa students para makarelate yung students sa kanya. Kailangan kunin niya yung attention ng mga bata para hindi ma-divert yung attention nila sa ibang bagay. Okay? So sometimes, kapag nagkakaroon ng eye contact or tinitignan ka ni teacher, ibig sabihin may ibig sabihin yan. Okay? It could be, meron kang ginagawa dyan sa upuan mo na kailangan tignan ka ni teacher ng mabuti para ma-divert yung attention mo. Napapansin ako ni ma'am, kailangan kong makinig sa kanya. Or it could be, nakikipag-chismis ka dyan sa katabi mo, kaya nagkakaroon ng eye contact. It could be, nagkakaroon din ng eye contact, especially, eye contact, di ba, minsan, nangyayari yan sa exams and quizzes, okay? So, sometimes, yung mga eye contact na yan, lahat po yan may ibig sabihin. Okay? Lahat ng facial expressions, halimbawa si teacher nakasimangot pagpasok pa lang sa classroom. Okay? May ibig sabihin na it could be bad with si teacher, it could be may problema na pinagdadaanan si teacher. Okay? So, kapag naman nakasmile si teacher pagpasok sa classroom, uy, masaya si teacher. Oh, good mood ngayon si ma'am. Okay? So, lahat po ng mga facial expressions, body movements, postures natin, lahat yan may ibig sabihin kahit hindi na tayo magsalita. Okay? So, minsan kapag napapagod tayong magsalita, sasabihin na lang natin, okay? Or yung action natin is ganito, thumbs up. Ibig sabihin, okay na yan, okay na yan. Okay? So, sometimes doon natin ina-express yung sarili natin sa mga non-verbal communication, which is also ginagamit lalo ng mga deaf and mute natin. So when we talk of deaf and mute, hindi po sila nakakapagsalita at hindi rin sila nakakarinig. So, but of course, kahit hindi sila nakakapagsalita at hindi sila nakakarinig, marunong pa rin sila mag-communicate sa mga tao. Why? Through sign languages, okay? Most of them din siguro nag-aaral, okay? Meron din ata dito somewhere in Visayas, di ba, dati nung hindi pa nagka-COVID. So, nag-aaral din po sila. So, tinuturuan din sila ng mga sign languages para maka-communicate din sila doon sa mga tao or sa mga katulad din nila. Okay? Verbal symbols usually come in the form of spoken words, but they may also be in other forms such as grunts like huh or ugh, breaths or or shrieks ah or I, or anything else coming out of the mouth of the speaker. So, pwede rin yan, class. Okay, so those are some of the examples. Okay. Next, channel. So channel refers to the medium through which the message is sent. So it connects the sender and the receiver. Now, when we talk of channel, class, it is the medium used by the speakers and the encoding and decoding messages. So ito yung medium na ginagamit natin when we try to communicate or when we transmit messages from the sender going to our receiver. So just like what I am doing right now. So nag-video ako ng sarili ko for me to transmit the messages or yung understanding ko or yung knowledge ko about our topic. Okay, so I am using now a laptop. So ito yung medium na ginagamit ko para ma-transmit ko yung message sa inyo para you were able to see it and you were able to understand it clearly. Okay, so maraming pwedeng maging channel as long as it is the medium na ginagamit mo to transmit your messages. Okay? Now, when we talk of noise, class, ito yung sinasabi natin kanina. It is anything that reduces the quality of the signal sent by the sender through the channel, weakening the communication between the sender and the receiver. Now, when we talk of noise, it can be external or internal. So, it blocks the communication to transpire, and yung na-discuss natin. Excuse me. Yan yung na-discuss natin kanina. So, when we say internal, class, the noise is coming from the sender, okay? Galing sa atin. Example, ako yung sender, nanggagaling sa atin, or it could be nanggagaling sa inyo yung noise. It's internal noise kapag nanggagaling mismo sa sender yung noise. So, it could be the sender is experiencing stomach ache, masakit yung tiyan, headache, masakit yung ulo, coughing, inuubo, or anything that hinders him or her to communicate or listen attentively in class. Okay? For example, merong nagre-report na mga kaklase ninyo and kayo dyan nakaupo while listening to them. So ngayon, biglang sumakit yung tiyan mo, hindi mo alam bakit or hindi mo alam, ano bang nakain ko kanina, ba't sumakit yung tiyan ko? So minsan, nadadivert yung attention natin, nagkakaroon ng noise within us as the senders. Why? Kasi yung attention natin, instead of listening to our classmates or to your classmates, yung attention ninyo is nadadivert doon sa sakit ng tiyan, okay? So nawawala na yung attention natin doon sa ina-explain or dinediscuss ng classmates kasi may noise. Ano yung noise? Yung stomach ache. Bakit? Masakit yung tiyan ko, yung attention ko nandito na sa sakit ng tiyan, okay? Hindi na doon sa dinediscuss ng classmates ko. Now, when we talk of external class, the noise is coming from outside, nanggagaling sa labas. So, example, if the surrounding is very windy or noisy, the words spoken by a speaker become garbled and difficult to the receiver to hear properly. Minsan, nako-confuse ka. Ano ba yung gusto niyo ipahiwatig? Why? Kasi merong mga noise sa labas. For example, in a classroom setting, halimbawa, imagine natin ngayon na nasa loob tayo ng classroom and nagde-discuss ako and kayo dyan nakaupo sa mga upuan ninyo. Just try to imagine, okay? So, and habang nagde-discuss tayo, merong what? Merong dumadaan na mga bata na maingay, okay? So, minsan nadadivert yung attention natin doon sa ingay sa labas, okay? It could also be the speaker has does distract the audience, such as unsightly teeth, improper clothing, or even saliva flying off a speaker's mouth can be considered noise because it reduces the quality of the signal or message being sent by the speaker. Okay, so yun. Next is the feedback. Okay, when we talk of feedback, it refers to the message transmitted by the receiver in response to the message of the speaker. So it may come as feedback on the quality of the observed signal, such as when a listener says, huh? When he or she does not hear the utterance clearly. So when we talk of feedback, ito yung reply or response ni receiver kay sender, okay? Feedback also enables the sender to make adjustments to how he or she codifies his or her thoughts or to correct the ideas himself or herself. So feedback is very important in producing understanding between senders and receivers. So once na decode na po ni receiver yung message na binigay ni sender, then that's the time na magbibigay na siya ng feedback. Okay? Now we have types of communication. First, we have intrapersonal. So what is this intrapersonal? So it involves talking to yourself, okay? Kinakausap mo yung sarili mo. It may also involve meditation about yourself, where you think about your life and what is involved in it. Now, it is a communication within yourself, okay? For example, thinking, remembering, imagining, and talking to yourself. So sometimes, class, di ba, lalo na yung mga babae, kapag nakaharap sila sa salamin, they are trying to what? Talk to themselves, okay? Ba't pangit ako ngayon? Parang hindi ata pantay yung kilay ko, okay? So sometimes, kinakausap natin yung sarili natin na, okay ka pa ba, self? Kaya mo pa ba? Okay, so those things. So ang tawag natin doon is intrapersonal communication. So it allows you to get to know yourself better, okay? Organize your thoughts and heal yourself emotionally. So in intrapersonal communication class, you have the opportunity to explain yourself, including your motives and actions against your values, and allow yourself to make adjustments to your behavior based on what you think is best, okay? So meron tayong tinatawag na mga introvert and extrovert na mga tao. So yung mga introvert, sila yung gusto lang nilang mapag-isa, sila yung kapag nag-aaral, gusto nilang nakikinig ng music habang it could be yung mga intrapersonal, sila yung gusto nilang mapag-isa, okay? So habang nag-aaral sila, ayaw nila yung may mga kasama kasi siguro naiingayan sila, kaya they mas pipiliin nilang mag-aral mag-isa, okay? So maraming ways we have different learning styles naman. So meron naman yung iba na gusto kasama yung friends kasi mas naiintindihan daw nila kapag nandyan yung mga friends nila, nakakapag-brainstorm sila. And meron din naman yung iba na gusto nila sila lang kasi ayaw nilang maingay habang nag-aaral. Okay? So yan yung mga intrapersonal. Now, kung meron tayong intrapersonal, we also have interpersonal. So it involves talking to one or a limited number of people. So this requires you to adjust your speech to suit the character and personality of the person or people you talk to. So it is a communication among relatively small number of people. It could be dyadic or small group communication. So kung si intrapersonal, sa sarili lang, kinakausap yung sarili. Ito naman si interpersonal, ito yung meron siyang kausap. It could be person to person or it could be in a small group. So this requires you to adjust your speech to suit the character and personality of the person or people you talk to. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na minsan kapag nag-aaral kayo or tayo, di ba? Minsan gusto natin yung may kasama tayo para hindi naman boring or hindi tayo antukin. So gusto nating nag-brainstorm para if ever na meron kang hindi naiintindihan, pwede mong itanong doon sa kaklase mo. Now, when interpersonal communication is between two people, then it is considered a dyad. Okay, yan yung sinasabi ko kanina na dyadic communication. Ibig sabihin, dalawa lang po yung nagko-communicate. Like a situation wherein two persons meeting in a Starbucks. Ayan. Okay, nag-meet sa Starbucks. So silang dalawa lang maybe may pinag-uusapan. Okay. Now, when interpersonal communication naman is between 3 or more people, yan yung tinatawag natin na small group, okay? Small group. It is a situation, or for example, a situation like a committee planning for homecoming activities. Or it could be, halimbawa, merong reporting or merong thesis, okay? So, small group lang naman yun. So, nagdi-discuss kayo, nagbe-brainstorm kung ano yung mga dapat gawin. Okay? So, we have dyadic and small group under interpersonal communication. Okay? Next, public. Now, when we talk of public, it involves communicating to a wide group of people with very varied traits, background, interest, and persuasion. So, it requires a lot of background explanation in expressing your ideas. So, engaging in this type of communication means avoiding specialized language such as jargon or slang, okay? Now, when we talk of jargons class, these are words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group, such as a wool in military, alam kong narinig niyo na yan, meaning absence without leave, okay? On the other hand, when we talk of slang, okay, alam kong di ba sometimes, parati ko kasi itong naririnig, di ba, sa mga students mostly. Kapag meron silang kaklase na magaling mag-English, di ba, sinasabi natin, ang slang niya naman, ang galing niya magsalita, ang slang niya, no? So sometimes sinasabi natin yan, which is wrong. Why? Why, ma'am? Ba't hindi? Ba't hindi pwede? Because class, when we talk of slang, it refers to the non-standard words or expressions which are known and used by certain groups, like teenager groups, student groups, or jazz music players, and etc. So example, the abbreviation DIY stands for do it yourself, okay? And it tends to refer to home improvement. So that is one example of DIY. In the Philippines, marami tayong mga slang words. Like for example, charot, okay? When we talk of charot, ibig sabihin it's just kidding. Charot lang, okay? Just kidding. Next, chibugan na. Ibig sabihin it's already eating time, okay? Kainan na. And pet malu, okay? Pet malu, ibig sabihin awesome or extraordinary. So those are some examples of slang words, okay? So this is very informal class, which is not applicable in public speaking, especially if it is in a formal gathering, okay? So public speaking can be done in a classroom. Example, si teacher, nagde-discuss or nagbibigay ng kanyang topics or discussion. It could be kayo. For example, nagre-report, okay? And halimbawa, nag-oration, nagde-declaim, okay? So those are examples of public speaking. Or for example, nagbigay kayo ng welcome address, closing remarks, okay? So those are some examples of public communication. And last type of communication is intercultural. Now, when we talk of intercultural communication class, communicating with a person or group of people who may not share the same assumptions, values, allegiances as that of yours, and may have different associations with the symbols you take for granted as having a particular meaning. So it requires you to be very careful and engage in a lot of clarification. Okay? So it is a communication between people from different cultural backgrounds. Okay? Yan yung tinatawag natin ng intercultural. Okay, intercultural communication class is an approach to relations among members of these groups that focuses on the recognition and respect of cultural differences. So, iba't iba yung cultures na meron tayo. Meron yung Christians, okay? Meron din yung mga Muslims, brothers and sisters natin. So, meron din silang mga sarili nilang cultures, traditions, and beliefs. Now, to promote understanding and goodwill, we need to respect each one's ideas, especially their practices, traditions, and beliefs. So kung gusto mong respetuhin ka ng isang tribe, or it could be ng iba't ibang religion, so you have to understand their practices, okay? Kailangan mong intindihin kung ano yung meron sila. Do not insist your own, okay? Kasi meron din silang paniniwala, okay? So those are the types of communication. So that ends our discussion for today. And for my references, these are my references, okay? So thank you so much for watching and listening in today's class. See you again in our next topic.